They're common. No, they're rare. No, they're common. Well, which is it? It's both. This is a common gecko, fairly easy to breed and certainly abundant in nature. But in the hobby, I dare you to find them. I'll tell you why this is. I started doing videos again about 5 years ago. No information at all on the internet about Hemidactylus tanganicus. Check this out. This is Wikipedia. No videos other than two 20-second feeding videos. Oh, here's an article mentioning Hemidactylus tanganicus. Wait a minute, what? Who is that? This is, in my opinion, one of the very best geckos to graduate to after you've been working with other classic geckos like cresteds, gargoyles, and leopard geckos. Working with Hemidactylus tanganicus is a great way to get experience with sand-dwelling and sand egg-laying geckos. Let's get into it. Honestly, adults are not much to look at. Hemidactylus tanganicus, or sometimes called Tanzania leaf-toed geckos, are pretty plain Jane gray with some blotching spots on their back. Adults are around 4.5 to 5 inches long. But oh, the babies are a knockout. Take a look at those colors. This is why we breed these animals at Supreme Gecko. Babies are absolutely beautiful. This is fairly typical of baby geckos, sporting all the cool colors. Baby Hemidactylus tanganicus are only a little over an inch long when hatched. That's pretty small. We'll talk more about babies in just a minute. But here's a quick question. Do you know anyone in the hobby keeping this rare, common gecko? Comment down below.
I don't know.
Let's take a look at their setup. We actually keep these geckos in two very different ways. Simple, or the more decorative, and I use that term loosely, way. First, this is the preferred setup. You can see this is fairly modest, but there is one significant key to this design. We have, of course, the water dish and the food dish. I like to add a number of hides in the enclosure for the animals to give them a sense of security. Sometimes a female will claim one of these spots, but really, Hemidactylus tanganicus prefers rocks. For substrate, I like to use reptile. There's going to be a link in the description. This is a great product as it is almost dustless and is very, very small granularly. This means if the gecko ingests some of the sand, it can easily pass. But the most important consideration in this enclosure is that rock cropping shown here. Now, the enclosure should include heat. You can provide this heat by using an overhead heat element, like a halogen light, or an under-the-tank heat mat. Both should be set up with a thermostat for heat control. It is very important to provide vertical rather than horizontal rock structure. These geckos love to wedge themselves in the crevices of the rocks. When I go in to move an animal, it's likely they are glued to a rock that they're holding on so tight. Most often, you're going to find thin rocks like this in the form of slate found in fish aquariums. The price of the slate, though, is high. For an enclosure like this, that's about 15 to 20 bucks. A great way to save some cash is to head over to your local home improvement store instead of the fish store. Pick up a box of tile. I like the terracotta or white brick colors. Take a tile out to your doorstep, jump on it, break it, and use that piece in your enclosure. You may need to use a piece of sandpaper on the edge to lightly take off the sharp edge. And here's the cool part. When I place that piece of sand or slate in the enclosure, I drag that piece across the bottom to pile up the sand between the pieces. That will be the area used by the geckos to lay their eggs. This makes it so much easier to find the eggs. Rather than going through that whole enclosure looking for them, you can simply move those pieces of slate or rock and drag your fingers through built-up sand. And with adult Hemidactylus tanganicus, you are going to find eggs. The other setup type that we use is very basic. This setup is used to grow out juvenile animals or hold young adults ready to sell. Again, include a water dish and a food dish. Provide heat, of course, as with the prior setup description. The two differences, though, in this enclosure are the substrate and the hide area. For sand, we use a cheap sifted play sand. Again, you can find that at your home improvement store. The reason for this is that we usually grow up many young Hemidactylus tanganicus in these setups and feed heavy. As they are eating so much food, they are, well, defecating a lot. We'll spot clean these enclosures weekly, but we'll completely change out the substrate every couple of months. The second major difference is the hide area, where we use cardboard egg cartons. These offer tons of hiding spaces. As well, they are cheap and can be disposed of easily when soiled. I stack these up 3, 4, 5 high, and the geckos love them. The geckos will position themselves to the heat as they need it, but will return to their little crevices as well. By the way, yes, this is a 10-gallon tank and there are easily 6 to 8 animals in there. They'll grow in this tank and potentially find new homes later, but if they don't, they will start laying eggs. And the cycle continues. We briefly talked a little bit about breeding Hemidactylus tanganicus before, but I did miss one key question everyone has. How do you tell males from females? Well, this is super easy with mature adults, as the females will always show eggs through their bellies. Another sign is the extended calcium sacs the females seem to always have. While males may sport these white globes occasionally, they will never be as pronounced as much as the females. With the combination of a mature male and female, quality food and water, heat, hiding places, and an area to deposit their eggs, these geckos will breed. One final point about males and females. As I mentioned earlier, dominant males will chase younger, subdominant males away from the group. You can easily catch them and relocate them to another enclosure. And what do you do once you find those eggs? Incubate them, of course. Take the eggs, place them in a milk cap with dry Supreme hatch material or some other material that will remain dry and prevent the eggs from turning and rolling over. Again, a link to the SHM is in the description. Place that milk cap into a hatching box with more Supreme hatch material that has been wet down. Again, links to these products are in the description. The moist material will help keep the eggs at the right humidity. Add a top while marking the species name and the date. Finally, place the eggs into an incubator or a place that they will stay between 78 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 to 29 Celsius. The eggs will hatch out in about 60 to 70 days. When the Hemidactylus tanganicus babies hatch out, they are the coolest little geckos. Like I said, they are so cute. I like raising these geckos in a 6-quart tub with ample ventilation. I love the size of these enclosures. In fact, I have 2 racks that hold 25 tubs per rack to raise up babies like this. No, they're not all Hemidactylus tanganicus. There are some other baby geckos in here as well. These racks are set up with 3-inch heat tape with about a third of the tubs held in the mid-80s temperature. Again, I like to use cheap sifted play sand with the babies as I can change the substrate very frequently. Add in that egg carton for hiding places and they will feel very secure in this enclosure. A small bottle cap for both a food and a water dish, and they are golden. I add a small amount of vitamins and calcium to the food dish as well. Now, these geckos are very small and eat all the time. So we feed every other day, minimally. They will scarf down fruit flies for the first week, and at that point we start adding micro mealworms. It won't take long until you're adding them to that 10-gallon tank as they grow up so quickly, less than 10 to 12 months to maturity. I want to mention again that I don't think there's a better gecko to work with when you want to move forward from cresties and leopard geckos and into a more advanced gecko, potentially into breeding. They will teach you so much about keeping an arid gecko and how you can incubate those eggs and raise up their young. They are common, but kind of rare too. Do you want to see some other rare geckos that when you move forward from Hemidactylus tanganicus that you can work with too? Make sure you watch these videos here to see some pretty cool geckos. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next video.